Hello and welcome. This is Art Fuel, and today I'm going to walk through how to set up your environment to do the full pull request process. These easier ways to do updates. The easiest way to do updates to a public GitHub repository like the PKS Ninja community here is you can go to pick any document you want here. Actually, that one is, of course, I have to pick one that doesn't have any content here. Pick the same one. Let's go here. And you can see there's a README file here. And I can edit this in browser, but notice it doesn't show me that right here, because I'm not looking at the README file. I'm just looking at the directory view. I actually have to click in at the README file, and then I can click edit, and then make small edits here. And that's super easy, easiest possible way. But oftentimes, if you're doing more serious work, if you're you're doing major work on a lab guide, building your own lab guide, it's really nice to be able to use your local tools, local editors, and so on to help build that information. And so so as it's GitHub, you can clone down the entire repository to your local computer. And you can make updates in your local tools, local file editors, and such that you have on your local machine, and then do a pull request process to be able to update the site. And so we're going to look at that slightly more involved pull request process and how I set up my environment for that. And so let's see, back to this home page here. And okay, so the first things first. First thing you need to do is you need to log into your GitHub account. If you don't have a GitHub account, you want to make sure that you have you set up a GitHub account, and then come to the github.com/cnatech/PKS-Ninja repository here. And make sure you have a fork. You may already have a fork. A lot of people already have forks. If you already have done that, then you can skip ahead of the making a fork process, but we're going to go ahead into syncing our fork here in just a minute. So let's go ahead and set up this fork. And also, if you do have a fork set up, you may want to set it up differently. Look at how I have it set up. I actually set it up to where I have, for each of the feature branches that we have here, I set up a separate local file, a local directory on my file system, because that really makes things a lot simpler. When you have your master and your PKS 1.4 version and maybe another branch that we have on here, and they have the same file names and the same directory structure many times, and you go to make updates, it's pretty easy to accidentally make a mistake and submit the wrong things and to get your commits clean. So we're going to look at how I set it up. Is I actually have, like I said, a local folder on my computer for each branch, and I'll show you how we do that here. So first we'll click fork. And I'm going to go ahead and fork this to my A-Fuel account. And this is just a standard GitHub account that I don't have any special permissions. I'm not a member of the official CNA Tech PKS Ninja repo. So anybody with any GitHub user account can come and make the same step. And now I have a fork, my own fork of the PKS Ninja repo. And that just is a point-in-time copy of everything that was on the repo, except now this is a version that's saved under my own GitHub account. And the reason why I want to do that is because it wouldn't make a lot of sense if we just let anybody come and directly update the main repository, right? That's a recipe for potential problems in our repository. And so the way you do it is you create your copy, you edit your own copy on your own GitHub account, and then once you've edited your own copy, you can submit just the edits that you've made back up to CNA Tech repo as a pull request. It's called pull because you don't push it there. You don't directly save the changes. You send in a request that allows an administrator of the PKS Ninja repository to approve it and merge it in, or essentially pull in the update. And so now that we have created our fork, let's I'm going to move this to the side and show you how I prepare my local directory here. Let me pull this up. I use the VS Code editor. I strongly recommend using a IDE like VS Code. I don't have anything particularly fancy set up for this environment, but it's very convenient. And as you'll see as we go through this, there's some nice plugins that are available for either VS Code or other IDEs that really make your life easier. Now, if you're new to IDEs, I don't have a developer background. I've been messing with these for a little while now, but it wasn't that long ago. I was brand new to this, and it can be a little intimidating at first. But one of the great things about Visual Studio Code is it's not very buggy. You don't run into too many problems. And you can use it as a very basic way. You don't have to do any configuration. You can download it. You can install it and set it up, and kind of just start using it. And this top window up here, it can act as a text editor, and I have my terminal right in the same spot. By default, it's going to load you up with a command prompt, and you can configure the terminal to use PowerShell, or if you install GitHub on your local machine, which you will need to do, you could potentially use GitHub, use the Git Bash editor that for Windows if you're using Windows. If you're using Mac, you can use VS Code as well with your preferred terminal. In my case, I'm using Windows 10, and Windows 10 does have this cool thing called the Windows subsystem for Linux. So I have, as you can see, or you may be able to tell, this is kind of a funky looking prompt, and this is actually a standard Ubuntu system, and I don't know exactly how Windows subsystem for Linux works, but it's pretty much regular Ubuntu running inside of my Windows environment, and so there's not much I have to change or accommodate. I can do just about anything I've tried in this environment, just like I would on any other Ubuntu machine. And so this is my code editor, and I'm going to highlight how I have my directory structure set up. Typically, when you install GitHub, it'll create a GitHub in your My Documents, or if you're on Mac, I'm sure it does something similar, and it kind of just creates this kind of placeholder directory for where you may want to host your GitHub files, and you don't have to host them here, but it's a good convention. And I created a couple other subdirectories because, again, I like to make sure I keep this very organized. I work with different GitHub repositories, and even if I were only working with PKS Ninja, I do keep separate directories for each branch, right? And so I create under my GitHub, I create a directory called forked to indicate these are not clones of the source repository. These are clones of my forked repositories. And then I put my GitHub user account, and beneath that I just create this directory called branch. There's no significance to these names. I just created them to help stay organized. And in branch, if we go to the PKS Ninja site, there's a few different branches, but right now I'm going to focus on master, which we use for PKS 1.3. It's an old naming convention. In the future, we'll name them all like this, where I have PKS 1.4. And while I'm here, just a little note on branches. We have long-running feature branches on this CNA Tech PKS Ninja repo, and so we plan to maintain a branch for each update to each version of PKS, each kind of minor version of PKS that we have there. And these branches are kind of long-running branches. Once PKS 1.4 has been fully updated, that'll become the default branch. Right now, you can see this checkbox by master, which indicates that master is our default branch for PKS 1.3. And at some point, we'll introduce PKS 1.5, and we'll just cycle these through and maintain each branch independently. That way, as we transition to PKS 1.4, and there's a class or a student who still wants to do work on PKS 1.3, those materials will still be maintained on that branch. Now, these are long-running branches. Maybe we could call them feature branches. This isn't necessarily typically of how you do software, but since we have lab guides and this is not a software repository, we'll take an exception here, and we'll keep our branches long running. Now, that's one type of branch. Another type of a branch that you can see is something like a patch branch, an update branch. And what these are for, these are temporary branches that are meant to be deleted very quickly. So what happens when you do make an update to a repository? Let's say I'm going to clone down my PKS 1.4 branch. And typically, if I'm going to make edits to some file, it's better for me to create a very temporary branch when I create the edits I want. And that way, when I submit my edits, I can submit that temporary branch that I created that only has the edits that I created back into whichever main repository I want to submit those updates to. and then usually you'll delete those branches temporarily. So again, generally I'm talking about long running branches here when I say, clone your repository for each of these branches. I do it for master and PKS 1.4 here, but if you do have any update patches, like this is just a leftover one that didn't happen to get deleted from an old update, we'll talk more about update patches later. Right now I'm really focusing on these long running feature branches here, like master and PKS 1.4. So now let me go back to my thing here, and I already created a folder for PKS 1.4, and that's just a folder that I named that for my own purposes. I name it exactly the same as the branch. That's not a requirement. It just helps to keep things organized for you on your local computer. And if you look at that ls PKS 1.4 folder I created, you can see I don't have anything in there yet. I just am creating it as a placeholder, and I'm also going to create one for my master branch here under this branches folder, and that way I can have a clone that I maintain, or I focus on my master branch if I need to do any updates to my master branch, and then I'll have that separate folder here. You can see I have two folders. I'll clone the I'm actually going to clone the repo into both, but I'm going to on this PKS 1.4 one, we'll do a single branch clone, which we'll look at in a minute. When we clone the master branch here, we can just do a standard clone because the by default it's just going to pull the master branch, or the default branch anyways, which by default happens to be named master, but which I could actually set any branch to be the default branch. Currently it is set to this master branch. So let's go ahead and here again, these are where I'm going to clone down my fork. I'm not going to clone down the source CNA Tech PKS-Ninja repository here. I'm going to clone my fork down so I can make edits to my copy, submit edits back up to my copy of my fork, and then from there I can open a pull request to have those changes pulled into the main repo. So now let's go ahead and CD here into master, and we'll just do a quick clone of master, as that one's actually really straightforward. So again, we're on my branch, a fuel PKS-Ninja, or my fork, excuse me, and I'm going to have this, it doesn't really matter here, I have it set to master. I'm going to go ahead and copy the cloner download link here, and then I can go back into here, and I can say git clone, and paste that string in, and it's going to clone that down. And I'll pause it while that's cloning. Okay, I finished pulling that down, and now you can see here I'm in my master, and if I view that here, I have the PKS-Ninja repository cloned, and you can see it's exactly the same as it would if you're looking on the GitHub browser. I have the same folders here and so on. I can say git branch, and you can see I'm on the master branch here, and again, by default for your default branch, it's not going to pull down anything but the master branch unless you ask it to, and that's exactly what we want for right now. Now if I do this git remote v, you can see here that it has this origin defined, and origin is just a keyword that we use to define the source of where we're connected to remotely, which GitHub site we're connected. And it's a good practice to, as you can see here, this is only connected to my A-Fuel. And one thing we can do if we want to keep this up to date, right? Because what we're going to do is we may make local updates, and then we submit those updates after the pull request goes through. Those will update the main site, and other people may update the main CNA Tech PKS-Ninja repo as well. And when we come to edit here, the first thing we should always do is make sure that this branch is in sync with upstream, because what you don't ever want to do is you don't want to clone this one day, and then a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple months, any amount of time later, even a couple hours later, you may come in and start editing files that are not current, right? Because you're working on a copy. And that's important to realize. When you make your fork, where's this fork? This fork does not stay up to date on its own, right? This will get stale, and one of the ways you can see that it gets stale, one of the ways you could update it, right, is you can see here it says this branch is even with CNA Tech Master because we just cloned it, right? But it'll tell you right here. It'll say this branch is one behind, or it'll be two behind, commits behind master, and you can actually initiate a pull request from right here that'll go back to master and pull all the new updates into your GitHub repository right through the browser if you'd like. Oftentimes when you're working with CLI, you may prefer to do it at the CLI. And you can always delete and re-download these to get the most current copies if you mess something up. You could try to troubleshoot it, but oftentimes one of the great things about Git is you could delete these folders and then start over again if you have an issue. Now we want to connect this to the main CNA Tech repo. So we need to go git remote add upstream. And upstream is a keyword that we'll use to identify, it's a very descriptive keyword. I don't know that you have to use the word upstream, but it is something you do want to use because it's how it's typically done, and all the documentation and stuff will reference the use of this word upstream. Once we get our upstream, now we're going to go ahead and copy the URL copy the clone or download link to the main PKS-Ninja repo, right? Notice GitHub, CNA Tech, PKS-Ninja repo. We'll copy this clone or down link, go back into VS Code right here, and then we go ahead and add that. And now we can say git remote -v again, and it's going to show us. Now we have our origin, and we also have our upstream. And so this is so that is all stuff that you do one time. Now I've set this up. It's all set up. My master clone of my fork, the clone of my fork, and in order to keep my fork up to date, every single time that before I edit any files, anytime I come here, and usually if I edit a file, if I spend a little while editing a file, before I push those updates, I'll do this same sequence again. So this next sequence here, you're going to want to, this is like the bicycle steps, right? So we want to do git fetch upstream. And this pulls down any updates into upstream that you don't yet have in your local repository, right? And you can see it's showing me that I could pull these branches here. And it would tell me, you could see here, what I would want to do if I want to pull down those branches. And that's actually going to just pull down the information about the available updates. And I'm only interested in master. So what I'm going to do now is if I look on git branch, you can see that I am in the master branch now. So what I want to do is I want to merge the changes from the upstream master, the main repo, if there are any, and I want to merge them into my local branch. And then that way my local copy here will be up to sync. So now I'm going to do git merge, just like it shows there in that command, upstream /master. And you see it says already up to date because we just did this. But in general, like I said, you want to do this all the time because any number of people may be updating the upstream repo at any time. And so you always want to make sure you're doing this. And if I had made local changes, one of the great things about that is if somebody else made changes and I didn't have them incorporated in my local file system, or worst case scenario, maybe someone else edited the same doc I edited, right? When you merge it locally, it gives you the opportunity to find the merge conflict and actually edit the merge conflict the way that you would like to before you submit it. And so most of the time, if you just follow these regular habits of making sure you update it before you start I'm sure you do this synchronization process before you start editing local files and before you push back local files, you don't run into any conflicts. But in the event that you do, it is actually a nice thing that you know about it. Maybe you can make the edits yourself, or you can go out and ask for help on our Slack channel, or open an issue ticket on the GitHub if you need help dealing with that, right? So now we did git merge upstream master. Now I like to do this git add dot. What this does is any locally edited files, it adds them to the staging. It's not really a necessary step here to synchronize. This next one is git commit. And then we'll do a small commit message. And for these, I usually just like to do something simple like syncing repo. And the purpose of committing this is once you do your git merge upstream master and your git add, git merge upstream master takes any updates from from the upstream master, and it incorporates them to your local file system, right? But your local file system is not upstream master, right? It's a clone of your fork. And so we still haven't done anything to tell to let's say if we pulled some updates, those updates that we pulled would have been only local to my own local computer here. I didn't do anything to say go update my fork on GitHub, right? So if you go to if I had updated something here, I could go to my fork on GitHub and I would not see that update yet because I haven't done that. And so this step I'm doing now is to make sure that my GitHub is refreshed as well and in sync. My fork on GitHub is in sync with the upstream. So say git commit -m syncing repo, and that again it says nothing to commit. So there's nothing to do here, but we'll see some of these with some updates in a few minutes here. And then the last step is I do a git push, and remember this is going to push to my origin. Right, I could specify origin if I wanted to, but by default it's going to push to my origin, and so which is my fork on GitHub. So if I afuel, so github.com, in my case afuel /PKS-Ninja, this is not updating the upstream, right? Now it says everything up to date, and we'll see this again in action in a few minutes. But what happens is when you do push an update, if anything was updated, you come back to your PKS-Ninja repo, make sure you're looking at the relevant branch master, and it would say right here, you have updates, right? And then it'll already prepare everything you needed to do the pull request to update. If your branch is ahead of the master, which it would be if you pulled an update, you could do a pull request here. But in this case, that just confirmed that my fork here is current, everything is up to date. Now I'm going to go ahead here, back into here. So now that I've done all that, let's go ahead, and I'm in my master. Let's jump over to the PKS 1.4 to set up that branch, and we'll go. So now I'm in this folder. You can see there's nothing here yet for my PKS 1.4 branch, and here I'm going to do a similar thing. But I'm going to say git clone, and I'm going to say -b, right? And what the -b stands for is branch, and you can look and see the branch name here is PKS 1.4, right? So I'm going to go ahead and type in that branch name, PKS 1.4, and then we'll go ahead and now this is what I want to clone. I want to clone my fork. Right, so I'll go ahead and I'll copy this clone link again, and it doesn't matter what branch you're on. It's not branch specific. We're going to actually specify the branch in the command here, not in the URL. And then we do --single-branch, right? And enter. And yeah, this specifies our PKS 1.4 branch, and it pulls this folder down. So now I'll have one folder here. If I want to update something on master, I'll go into my local directory for master. If I want to update something on PKS 1.4, and this again, it really helps because there's so many files that have the same file names that are in the same file location, but happen to be running on different branches, and it can get really confusing, and it can be really easy to make mistakes and include bad things in your pull requests and so on. I find it's just a lot easier. Again, if I'm going to be updating, putting updates to a particular branch, clone down the repo for that branch locally. I'm going to pause this while it's completing. Okay, and now it's done, and we can go here, and we're going to want to do the same thing here to add upstream. Right, and we'll go ahead and click here. Oops, sorry, I didn't. So if you look in my PKS 1.4 directory, I gotta actually cd into the directory I just cloned down. It creates this PKS-Ninja, and then I can do that. Where's the git remote add upstream? And I can do git remote -v. And just to be safe, when I'm on one of these branches that's not the default branch, I like to do, when I synchronize it, I like to do git fetch upstream and then specify PKS 1.4 branch. It's interesting, when you do the fetch, you use this upstream space PKS 1.4. And we can see that I fetched that. If I check git branch, we can see that I'm working on the PKS 1.4 branch here. And so now if I do git merge, and then I can do, just like it says here, this upstream PKS 1.4, upstream slash PKS 1.4. And it's already up to date, and as usual, I like to do that git add dot git commit -m syncing repo with upstream, and I'm already up to date, and I can do a git push there. There's nothing to push, we know this, but in the event that there is, you'll want to push these up to your fork on GitHub. And so again, these ones here, this git fetch, actually, I didn't do it. Oh yeah, I did. I git fetch upstream PKS 1.4, git merge, git add, git commit, and git push. These are the things I want to do. Is just my normal hygiene behaviors. It seems like a lot, but once you do it a few times, I just do that every time, and it prevents lots and lots of other complexities you can get in with git updates. Makes things nice and as simple as possible for you. Okay, so now I want to get into an actual update. We'll do a quick update here just to demonstrate how this works. I'm going to update, let's see what I'm going to update here. I'm going to go ahead and, I know over here in lab guides, if I go to NSXT manual install, and I come here, if you look down here at these images, several of the images on this page are not populating, and I have a lab template opened up where I can actually copy and paste some of these updated images here. So we'll just look at updating one of them to see how I do that. And so what I'm going to do is, now I'm in my local branch, just like I navigated it to it in the GitHub. I can see here it's the same sort of thing. I can do cd lab guides and see ls, and we can see here nsxt manual install. So I'll cd nsxt manual install ls. You can see I have my readme, I have my validate file, I have my images there, and so I'm going to, in my case, I'll press code readme.md, and what that's going to do is it's going to open up the file here in my VS Code editor. Now, you could also, open up your preferred editor if you want to use Notepad or something, and then navigate to the location where this in your hard drive here where this is stored, and edit it that way, and use a separate text editor. You do not have to use an IDE to be able to follow along with this. So we'll do here, I'll press code readme to open up that readme.md file. And we can see here now I have the exact readme.md file, and here I 1.1, I can see vSphere client from the hosts and clusters view. Right click on the region A01 management 01 cluster and select deploy OVF template. So that's pretty straightforward to get a screenshot of that. I'll go ahead and click in here to my lab environment. I'm already logged into my vSphere client here, and so I'm going to go ahead and click deploy OVF template, and that's actually the screenshot I want right there. And actually, I'm going to clean up that screenshot a little bit, because I right clicked on region A01, so that was, it would show that, but ESX04 was still highlighted. So just to make it extra clear, I'll highlight region A01 first, and then go over that deploy. And I've got a screenshot tool here. You can press print screen, and right click, and I don't need to select a lot of this because I don't want to make the screenshot larger. I want to make it large enough where people can see what it is, but not larger, just to prevent screen bloat. And go ahead and highlight that. And in my tool here, I have a little window here, so I'll just highlighter, and I'll highlight a couple of the spots that people will need to click just to make it a little easier. And then we'll copy that to the clipboard. And this is one of the things I really like about having an editor. Now I can go in here, highlight the text that I want to replace. I'll just delete it. And I can press Control-Alt-V. And sometimes I have to do it twice on the first time. And you can see it it pasted in the file, and it actually, I forgot, in this one it's automatically gonna paste in the brackets. So now I have an extra set of brackets, which is why it's showing red. But that's another wonderful thing about the IDE. If this was a regular text editor, I may not have even noticed that, but you see it's highlighting it in red right away because it knows something is wrong here. Because you can see I have image source, 2 closing brackets, 2 opening brackets. So we only need 1 bracket here. So I'm just gonna get rid of that. So ideally, before I pasted that, I should have just deleted that whole line. I forgot it pasted the whole thing in here, but it just pasted everything in there for me, and which is really nice, because as you can see, this is not a file directly, but it's a link to a file. So when I pasted it, it actually had to create and save a file in the images directory. So if you see here, I have this images directory here, and it actually created this file for me. Right when I did that, it created this file here in the images directory automatically, because I have a plugin in my IDE, which is real easy to get to. You can see here in the plugins I have something called paste image, and this is really easy to do. If you have VS Code, you can go ahead and just search for extension of the marketplace called paste image, and then you're good to go. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you may have to go into your settings, because I think some of these paste images tools by default will put the image in a folder called images, but with a lowercase I. Some may do it with an uppercase I, but these are case sensitive, so those are things you can just edit in your settings of the thing, just to make sure it is pasting it in the images repository within whatever working folder the document is open in. And so that made it really, really easy for me to update that image. I'll have to do more of these, but for the video, I just wanted to show how to do one update. I could update text in here, or I could do whatever, and once we've made those updates, we can go ahead and click File, Save, make sure we save that file. You can press Control-S while you're in this window here. And now the file is not in the staging for Git, so Git has this concept of staging. And so if I were to do a Git push right now, it would not push this. I have to add it to staging and then commit it before it'll push it back up. Now, a great thing to do, I know the only file that I updated was actually right here. And I've actually made one mistake. I should have created another branch and put this on the other branch. So I'll probably redo this video eventually and see that. But I should have done, git branch, and then created, a temporary update branch, which is an arbitrary name update. I could use like the name, the date, and the time, 8/12, 3:54. Something, just some random number, and then made these changes. But I didn't do that, so I'm actually, in this case, I'm going to make them directly to the PKS 1.4 branch, which is not a normally good practice, but it's fine if you're very careful with it. So so now I'm gonna, if I want to add this file to staging, I can do git add, and let's see, readme.md to just add that file, but that won't add the image, right? And so I'm going to do git add dot, and this is a command to be very careful with, because this is going to add everything beneath the subdirectory that I'm in, and Git is smart enough to know which files have been modified and which haven't. And so for all the images that were already there, and the text that was already there, Git's going to be aware of those, and it's just going to identify what the new lines are, and if there's any new image files, it will add those, but it's not going to try to re-add stuff that's already there that I didn't modify. So I press git add star, or dot, and again, this is sensitive. I'm in this install directory, so that will only add any modified files that are in this install directory, and that's a great way to ensure that you're only adding files that you've modified, right? You wouldn't want to be like, oops, // If I do it here, if I were to do the git add here, then that would add everything in all the files in my repository. And if I've opened something, if I've changed something, if something goes weird in any way, that can potentially add files that you're not meaning to add into your pull request. And so now that I've done the git add, it doesn't really matter where I do the git commit, because this commit is only going to commit files that I've already added to staging. That's not going to arbitrarily pick files to add. So I'll do a -m, and if you have a longer message, just hit this -m and it'll open a text editor for you, and you can write a longer message. If you have a short message, you can just actually you just do, if you have a longer message, just do git commit enter. It'll open a text editor, right? If I have a short message, I'll do a -m flag, and then I see here adding image to and the syntax I like to use here for this is, we did in a NS16 manual, the course code here is IN1497. So I'm going to say IN1497 and then hit enter. And now I can do git push. And I'll type in, this is going to my fork. It's not going to the main repository, so I can put in my standard GitHub username and password, and that took the updates we created and it just pushed them up to so I'm on the A-Fuel PKS-Ninja branch, and if I refresh this now, and also that was in PKS 1.4, right? And we can see here this branch is one commit ahead of CNA Tech PKS 1.4 because we just committed something on our A-Fuel version of it, but the main one here, the CNA Tech version, is not does not have that commit yet, and so it notifies us right away when we go to the appropriate branch. We press pull request. Actually, before I do the pull request, let's just make sure that what I just added worked. Right, I'm just going to refresh this page, make sure it's current, and now we'll go down to 1.1, and we can see the image that I added is here. So now we'll go back up here and we'll do the pull request. And it has the node already there for me. And I'll go, and before you hit create pull request, you always want to just scroll down and make sure that you don't accidentally, it's pretty easy in Git to accidentally include things you don't mean to. And we can see here very easily, it added our image, right? This is we expected to add one image. And we also modified the link to the image. And we can see it's removing the old line and it's adding the new line that we added. So and there's nothing else here. So we know this is a nice, clean commit. And I can create my pull request. And just to show you what the administrative side looks of this, I have another browser open here where I'm logged in as a different account where I'm admin. And I can see if I go to CNA Tech PKS Ninja, the main repository, there is now a pull request waiting under my pull request tab. And I can click on that. And we have some rules here. Notice it says review required, and merging is blocked until I add my review. So I'll add my review. And I can see here on this page, what the things are. I already reviewed it. And so I'm going to go ahead and just click approve. Normally, it's nice to do approve messages, but this is pretty straightforward. Okay, and that's it. Now if I go over here to my main PKS Ninja repo, I'm going to go to PKS 1.4 branch, and I'll go to my lab guides, and I'll go to NSXT manual install, and go down to that 1.1 image we updated, and we can see here, of course, it's going to be a pain right now. Okay, that didn't work because I approved it, but I never finished the merge request. Okay, so after I approve it as the administrator, you see now it makes this ability to merge it green. So I have to do, as the administrator, has to do 2 steps: approve the review and then merge it. And once I've confirmed the merge, now I can go back to that page. Where was it? Refresh it just to make sure it's current. And we can see here that now I have the image there that I updated. And that's that. One final thing you may want to do to close out, just to make sure your branch is in sync. notice you made the update here locally. You push the update to your fork. Then the fork pull requested over to the main branch. The main branch got updated, and so you're really in sync with the main branch, but your local repository doesn't necessarily know that. So if you want to, at this point, you can again do this git fetch upstream PKS 1.4, and then git merge upstream PKS 1.4, enter, and you notice it says fast forward, and that's just helping your local branch be fully aware that it's in sync with upstream. We didn't have to add or change anything. We don't have to add or commit. Now it's just our local branch now has awareness that the upstream has been updated as well, and we can again just do this just for. I like to do this all the time, just because these repetitive steps help you so much. I like to just keep it current. Git dash m sync with upstream, and it says nothing to commit, so we know that our local branch is still good shape. If I come here again next time to make an update, I'll go through the same process again. And that's how I keep. Now again, the one difference I did not do that I usually do is I would normally come in here and I'd create, when I'm ready to make my update, before I make the update, I'll go git branch, and I'll create a feature branch, and then when you're done with that update, that's a throwaway branch, right? You already made that update. You can come in here and delete the branch. And that is it. Hopefully this will help you set up and get used to doing the pull request process, where you're able to clone down the directory and use your local tools for making large edits. Thank you for your time.